On 8 December 1941, the 25th Japanese Army invaded Malaya, commencing the occupation. The Japanese invaded Kota Baru and moved east. In concert with landing in Thailand and Patani and Singora, they assaulted Malaya west flank. Young Malays unions guides and aids in interpretation during Japan's 1941 to 1942 invasion of Malaya. Their head, Ibrahim Yaakob, trained in Japan for 6 months and was named Lieutenant Colonel of Gyugun. Ibrahim Yaakob established the Gyugun militia in Malaysia and Sumatra. The Japanese arrived on Kuala Pak Ahmad Beach just before midnight on 8 December 1941, igniting a devastating confrontation between the British Indian and Japanese soldiers. Battle started the Pacific War and the Japanese invasion of Malaya. As Japanese wave attacked, the British retreated. The Kota Baru airport was captured. Singapore, Hong Kong, and Pearl Harbor were attacked simultaneously. Japanese invaded Sungai Petani, Butterworth, and Alostar on 9 December 1941. On 10 December 1941, HMS Prince of Wales and HMS Repulse sailed down Malaysia's east coast to Kuantan. Japan sank both ships without air defense and the British troops withdrew quickly. Kota Baru split Japanese troops. Japan invaded Penang on 11 December 1941. On 12 December 1941, the Japanese took Jitra and Alostar. British troops fled south. The British subsequently surrendered Penang on 16 December 1941. After 8 hours of battle of Prachak Kirikan, the Japanese threatened to utilize Thailand military base to invade Malaya by threatening the Thailand's government. Lieutenant General Takaro Mitsui, 5th Division, tasked to invade Kedah and landed at Singora on 8 December 1941. While on 10 December 1941, Japanese force under Colonel Seki attacked Bukit Kayu Hitam. British forces defending Perlis retreated to Jitra, and they burned out many minor bridges between Kodiang and Jitra during their withdrawal. This prevented Jitra from receiving much heavily weaponry. On the east coast, the Japanese force was met by the Indian 3rd Corps and British units. Japanese troops quickly separated Indian units defending the shore before concentrating on the siege and forcing capitulation. The Japanese army that landed in Kota Baru split into 2 parts. One goes to Kuantan and another to the Perak River. Japanese units that participated in the Second China-Japanese War had an advantage in close air support, tanks, coordination, tactics, and experience. The Japanese employed cycle infantry and light tanks to move quickly through dense tropical rainforests. The British planned to delay the Japanese arrival in southern Thailand, but Chief Air Marshal Sir Robert Brooke Popham, Commander-in-Chief of the British Far East Operation Headquarters, rejected authorization to start Operation Mandator and Operation Kochor before the attack to avoid provoking conflict. The traders from India visited the Malay Peninsula in the beginning of Christian era. In the era of modern Kedah, small Hindu states sprang up. Sriwijaya started to dominate the peninsula in the second half of the 8th century. Cholas for Coromandel coast of India dominated the peninsula in the 11th century. Thailand king Sukhothai took over peninsula from the north in the late 13th century. The last empire of Hindu Java, known as Majapahit, and the Thai king of Ayutthaya ruled over the peninsula in the late 14th century. Later in the 15th century, the Malays started to convert to Islam after the fall of Majapahit. During the 16th century, the Portuguese ruled over Malacca in 1511. Then, the peninsula was taken over by the Dutch in 1641. The British started to rule the peninsula after the settlement in Penang in 1786 and Singapore in 1819. The British play an enormous role in every aspect of the peninsula, like politics, economics, and society. The rising power of Siam and increasing Imperial Britain become rivals. The protectorates over several Malay states were established by the British as a strong protection over the country. The boundaries between Siam and Malaya was fixed in 1909. On 8 December 1941, Japanese soldiers began an amphibious assault in Kota Baru and advanced south. Japan attacked Western Malaya. The French let the Japanese use the territorial ports as naval bases. developed air bases and mass soldiers for the invasion. The Japanese soldiers bombed Singapore and dominated the northern Malaya. The Japanese used bicycle infantry and light tanks. This allowed their armies to move over quickly through dense tropical forests and native roads. Japan invaded Malaya for 3 years and 8 months. 11th Indian Infantry Division Major General Murray Leon was moved without effect on 23 December 1941. By the first weekend of January, the Japanese controlled northern Malaya. Thailand signed a treaty of friendship with Imperial Japan to create a limited military alliance. The Japanese permitted Thailand to continue dominating various Malayan sultanates, consolidating their control. On 26 December 1941, the Japanese army took Ipoh. In the Battle of Kampa, between 30 December 1941 and 2 January 1942, the British Army resisted the Japanese onslaught for 3 days and 3 nights. The Battle of Slim River on 7 January 1942 offered the Japanese Army an easy access to Kuala Lumpur. On 9 January, General Wavell decided to evacuate the British Army to the north of Johor and depart Kuala Lumpur. The Japanese Army quickly conquered Kuala Lumpur and they had successfully taken it unchallengedly on 11 January 1942. On 15 January, the Japanese 5th Division battled the Australian 8th Division. The Japanese Army suffered its first tactical setback due to the Australian Imperial Army tenacious opposition at Gemas. The combat surrounding Gemenche Bridge caused 600 Japanese deaths, while the bridge was restored within 6 hours. The Japanese sought to surround Australian fortification west of Gemas, launching the bloodiest fight of the Malayan conquest campaign on 15 January near the Muar River. Bennett sent the inexperienced 45th Indian Brigade to defend the south bank of Muar River, but Japanese soldiers coming from the sea destroyed the battalion and murdered its commander, Brigadier Duncan. The British sent 2nd 19 and 2nd 29 west, and the 19th Battalion battled the Japanese south of Muar on 17 January 1942. Led by Lieutenant Colonel Anderson, withdrawing Indians and Australian troops, established the Muar Force and battled fearlessly for 4 days to allow Commonwealth troops to evacuate from northern Malaya without being caught by the Japanese forces. On 20 January, Japanese forces landed at Endau despite bombing from antique Vickers Valdivie's torpedo bombers. The last Commonwealth defense in Johor, Batu Pahat, Kluang, Mersing is under attack. Unfortunately for the defenders, Gen Percival opposed the construction of a solid defense in Johor on Singapore's northern shore. Percival brushed aside his chief engineer's repeated request to commence construction with the statement of bad defense for morale.